Very much modern journalism is based on these assumptions, as you say.
Very, very much of modern journalism is based on assumptions like that. Well, it's exciting, and the problem with many academic discourses, is that they are so rarefied that few people outside of the discipline can actually talk about them. Jürgen Habermas has a good term for this. He calls it expert cultures. These expert cultures develop their own private logics and languages that are very hard for people to penetrate unless you've spent a long time studying inside them. We live in a world of specialization. We live in a world where most experts do not step outside their own fields. And while I was writing The Shaking Woman, I felt that one of the pleasures of doing it was moving from one field to another.
But what happened then? Were the curtains falling, or what happened?
The curtains falling?
Is that not? I was translating directly from Norwegian. That's maybe not.
The curtains rising, you mean? No.
Rising,
explain.
maybe. If that's an expression.
we lost a thread here. Rephrase it so I understand what you're asking.
Well, when you go into a field and you start understanding the vocabulary.
Oh, right.
What happens then?
Oh, yes. Does the curtain lift?
Yes,
I think that that's how people learn in these particular fields. They acquire the language. They begin to do research out of the paradigms of whatever they're working on, and mostly don't look from side to side. There's a hugely blinkered aspect to most disciplines. At the same time, I think recently there's been an awareness that in order to solve certain problems, the problem of consciousness is a big one. Why are we conscious, and what is consciousness? How does it work in the brain? What is its connection to unconsciousness? Is there a moment in the mind when the light turns on and we're conscious? These are questions that probably cannot be solved within a single field.
Who is the grieving American?
The grieving American? Well, it's the sorrows of an American, not the grieving American.
Is it an interesting difference between sorrows and grieving, or should I just rephrase maybe?
Yes, sorrows is a very difficult word to translate into other languages. It turns out that title gave my foreign publishers immense difficulty. Sorrows is an old English word that brings many aspects of sadness into itself. Sadness, it can include grief, but not necessarily grief. So it's difficult. And also the American of the title could be any number of characters inside the book, because several characters have sorrows of one kind or another. And I didn't want to limit it to a single person.
And sorrows could be big or small, maybe, as well.
And sorrows could be big or small. And there are many different kinds of sorrows in the book, from the youngest character, Eglantine, to the sorrows of the father who's dead during the whole course of the book.
I really like it when someone dares to use the word American in the title of a novel.
Well, I was thinking of any number of characters in the book, and I had some irony in using the title, because at what moment does one become an American? It's a question of immigration, really, so that the father in the book comes from this Norwegian American immigrant world. But there's another character, Miranda, who has emigrated from Jamaica and is living in the United States. So there are multiple Americans, or almost Americans, not yet Americans, in the novel. And I wanted to play on that and use it with a certain irony. So the interesting part about American culture is that it has integrated into its culture. You know, if you're born in America, you're an American. And perhaps especially New York, where most of the book is set, is so diverse. There are so many different languages spoken here, so many immigrants. In fact, almost 40% of New York City is foreign-born. Think of that. So this is a place of many languages and many cultures all living together.
Yeah, what does it do to a city?
And so the idea of an American, you know, is multiple. There is no single kind of American. Even if some right-wing forces in the United States have wanted to insist on real Americans as white and living in small towns, this is an absurdity, and it's never been like that. From the very start, we've been an immigrant culture. So all of that, I think, is present in the use of the word American in the title.
So there's a great potential. I mean, both Sorrows and an American being very flexible words in a way.
Yes, they're both flexible words. I agree. And I can say that the title came to me when I was reading Ulysses S. Grant's memoirs. I was just at the beginning of it, and he starts. This is the he became an American president, of course, but he was also a Union general during the Civil War in the United States. And he begins his book by saying that his family had been Americans for many generations, going way back. And I thought to myself, oh, not true of me, you know, just a few on my father's side, you know, and my mother is an immigrant herself. So my life is much closer to immigrant stories than Ulysses S. Grant's was. And that's when the title popped into my head, The Sorrows of an American.
Wow. When does an immigrant become an American?
Well, you know, there are official procedures. So my mother, for example, became an American citizen. And she used to say, I remember, she said, every time I vote, I'm glad I did it. So people become Americans by going through the ritual of, I don't know, swearing allegiance and learning who the first president was and things like that. But I think that the struggle between two cultures often lasts through the second generation. And my father, who did a lot of research on Norwegian American immigrant culture, always said that the fights between those who wanted to Americanize and those who wanted to remain Norwegian were ongoing. And this is true of every immigrant culture, whether it's Filipinos or people coming from Asia. All of these various immigrant cultures go through the same story.
What was your father's opinion then?
Well, I think he had a certain distance of a scholar. He himself was very bound to both to that world where he grew up and to Voss, where his father's family came from. So he needed, I think, a sense of continuity, which is not unusual. This is how people form their identities, after all, through some sense of connection to the past. And when people are cut off from that past, it can be quite difficult.
Is it fair to say that from time to time New York City also is kind of a character in your books?
I do feel that New York has a particular character, and that it has influenced the novels. The longest period of time that I dealt with was in the novel What I Loved, set almost exclusively in New York City, and it takes place over 25 years. I was thinking quite consciously about the atmosphere of the city during those years. It's 1975 to 2000. And I think that, yes, there's an atmosphere, an excitement, a zeitgeist, if you will, that I wanted to present in that book particularly.
Because to a Norwegian reader, it's very exotic with New York and all the kind of meetings between people, the planned ones and the occasional ones, and those kinds of things. Very interesting.
Well, but Norwegians have Norwegians meet with each other and have dinners and do all that too. Is there any difference?
Not that many dinners.
Not that many dinners? Well, I'm sure. I think, well, in The Sorrows of an American, I only have one dinner party. And there are a lot of conversations between the siblings and other people. But I don't know, I guess because I've lived here for over 30 years, that I do remember New York as an exotic place for me as well, but I can't say that it remains exotic. Although there are probably parts of the city that I know very little about and I would still find exotic to this day. But as far as what you're trying to talk about is sociology, I think. And I don't know if there are profound differences. What is special about New York is the diversity, and I think a tangible excitement and life in the streets that is not quite the same as any other city I know of.